Hello, everyone. Welcome to this interview on doing sociology. Today, we have with us Raile Ziipao, who is an assistant professor of sociology at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. He has a postdoctorate from Harvard University and a PhD from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Previously, he has taught in the Central University of Punjab and Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Guwahati off campus, Nagaland. His published works include Infrastructure of Injustice, State and Politics in Manipur, Northeast India, published by Routledge in 2020, and Land, Words, and Resilient Cultures, The Ontological Basis of Tribal Identity, published by the Tribal Intellectual Collective India in 2019, co-edited with S.R. Bodhi. Rocky, we are very glad to have you and welcome to this platform. And thank you so much for taking time out on a Sunday and doing this for us.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so just to begin with, your work has been centered on the infrastructure of Manipur. In this context, what is the relationship that you see between the Look East policy, infrastructure, and local economy? If you could just start with that.
Well, yeah, thank you once again for having me. Pertaining to the question, the role of, the relationship between the Look East policy, infrastructure, and local economy, it's very pertinent here. Looking at the role of infrastructure in overall development, assumes greater significance in a landlocked states like Northeast. So this is more so in Northeast of India, as the region is not only landlocked, but also marked by hills and difficult geographical terrain. So the socio-political economic state of the region became the guiding framework for the policies and approaches of the government of India. This Look East policy, which was launched in 1991 by the Narasimha Rao government, was part of the development paradigms of the new economic reforms in India. So the essence of this Look East policy was to build on the stagnant diplomatic and trade relations with Southeast Asia, wherein Northeastern region was to facilitate as the gateway to these countries. So as part of this Look East policy, several measures were undertaken for the improvements of Northeast India. First among these were proposal to build the Asian highways, the Asian railway links, and the natural gas pipeline. So the creations of physical infrastructure is imperative in order to implement the Look East policy, which is now being rechristened as Act East policy by the present government. So primarily, road infrastructure is crucial for connectivity in the regions if it is to act as a gateway to Southeast Asia. So roads are again directly related to market in the context of the so-called frontier regions, which is marked by its landlocked nature. So the inadequacy of basic infrastructure limits the movement of both goods and people, especially in the hilly areas predominantly inhabited by tribes. So in order to integrate the local economy with the Look East policy or Act East policy, basic infrastructural facilities such as roads, electricity, cold storage, primary healthcare, all weather classrooms, basic market, among others, needs to be created. So consequence of inadequate infrastructure, includes villagers carrying their sick on a bamboo stretcher to the nearest health center. For instance, like oranges and Naga chilies, commonly known as ghost peppers in international market, grow abundantly in the district like Tamilang, which is one of the hill district in Manipur. However, the surplus agricultural produce is left to rot. As villagers are unable to transport into the market due to the lack of road access. So this requires the strengthening of the existing institutions and improvement in also bilateral relationships with India's immediate neighbors. So addressing the issues related to, say, insurgency, basic infrastructure, political negotiations, with various ethnic communities, integrations of the local economy, improving land connectivity across the border, strengthening the existing institutions in place, and also increasing this border trade would be a one way forward to look at about the correlations between this look-is policy, infrastructure, and local economy. So, and more so when the infrastructure like such as roads that bypasses local economy and the local people, that also amounts to, sort of injustice. So on that line, I try to bring in, argued about this correlation between these three categories.
Right. So our next question to you, Rocky, is on your book. You write that in your book, Infrastructure of Injustice, State and Politics in Manipur and Northeast India, you locate your book theoretically within the framework and concept of infrastructure of injustice. So if you could throw some light on this concept.
Well, yes, of course, the infrastructure for that matter occupies a peculiar, ontology on that matter, because infrastructure entails connectivity or also disconnectivity, goods, people, ideas, as well as, maintenance and expansion of social relations. So, however, in a chronic conflict states like Manipur, infrastructure also provides a basic to understand the issue of access, inclusion, exclusion, equity, social justice, and other contemporary practices and processes of the state. So there are three major concepts I explore in my book. What is which you have pointed, infrastructure of injustice. And the other one is infrastructural injustice. And the third concept which I explore is infrastructure deficit regions. So when I talks about this infrastructure of injustice, I was looking at those infrastructures like roads that bypasses local economy, that bypasses people, that leads to injustice. For instance, there is one famous example, dam in the context of Manipur, Kuka Dam. The government has spent more than 300 crores and took more than nearly 27 years to build that dam. But what is the utility of that dam now is that till today, not even a single unit of electricity is being generated. And the utility of that dam is, picnic spot. And also occasionally locals go for fishing. So spending that much amount of money, displacing more than 20 villages, hundreds of people have been rendered as landless. That I call is the infrastructure of injustice. On the other hand, if we look at about this infrastructural injustice, we're in, those places where there should be an infrastructure, basic infrastructure, but those places they're not being given. So there are schools without roofs. There are schools without classroom. There are hospitals without doctor and nurses. There are roads which are not motorable. There is electricity, but it's not electrified, but there's no electricity. And at the same time, there is also, infrastructure deficits, especially if we look at about, the difference in terms of the hilly terrain versus that of the valley. So theoretically, I was in fact looking at the concepts of justice from three lenses, that of the Rawls, Amartya Sen's, and also Beard Ambedkar perspective on justice, and looking about, applying this in the context of infrastructure in my case. So when we look at about this, the liberal utilitarian principle of social justice espouses that the greatest happiness of the greatest number in the context of infrastructure in Northeast India would amount to injustice to those communities that are at the margin of the state and the dominant communities. So hence, it is problematic to conceptualize justice from the perspective of utilitarianisms. So Rawls critique and bemoan the utilitarian concept of justice. For Rawls, justice is the first virtue of social institutions, wherein he theorized justice as fairness. So echoing from this Rawls theory of justice in the context of infrastructural accessibility and distribution, infrastructure in Manipur and Northeast India should also ensure a fair or just manner among different social categories. Here I was looking at the case of tribe and non-tribals. So if one community appropriate all the resources and avail all primary goods, including basic infrastructure for itself, then this would amount to injustice. So Rawls' conception of justice as fairness provides the basic structure of the argument. So this basic structure becomes unfair when one community appropriate the benefits of all goods and services. Hence, the benefits of infrastructure should be fair and just for all communities, irrespective of their social location and also geographical terrain within a nation-state framework. So interestingly, it is also interesting to note the conception of social justice as propounded by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the context of the Indian society, which is marked by a pervasive caste systems. So his concept is based on the principle of equality, liberty, and fraternity in all social categories. For him, social justice would mean to annihilate the caste system based on graded inequality and removal of all inequalities existing in the societies. So echoing Ambedkar perspective, infrastructural justice would mean equal access to all infrastructure facilities, irrespective of caste, tribe, creed, religion, gender, and etc. So when certain social groups support a dominant caste appropriate infrastructure and deny access to other social groups, this is injustice. So fair and just distribution of materiality amounts, various social categories in India and the Northeast in particular is one way forward to address the question of infrastructural injustice. So there is a differential access to material resources or physical infrastructure like roads, electricity, telecommunication, hospitals, school, colleges, universities, and among others, based on social location and also the power dynamics is the hallmark of Indian society, and that germinate social exclusion. So here I'm reminded of Professor Kaka, who posited that differences have been the hallmark of Indian society. These differences emerge as a result of various long and complex historical processes. Hence, it is also imperative to address this historical injustice matter to certain social groups, such as like tribes or Adivasis and Dalits in India. And looking about this, Amartya Sen, the central idea of justice is indeed the removal of all injustice in the society. He was in one of the conference, he said that neglects of tribals is a huge spot on India's pursuit of justice. He said that I very much rebel against the view saying what we ought to do something about it, otherwise they would join the Naxalite. So for instance, insurgent in the case of Northeast India. So the reason we should do something about them is precisely because it's a matter of justice. So justice thus refracts the ideology of development, hence addressing the historical injustice meted out against certain social groups in India would echo the development with justice. On that broader theoretical framework, I try to locate my book in the debate on these infrastructural debates.
Right. Thank you, Rocky, for that answer. I think you very succinctly explained what infrastructure of injustice is. And now just moving on to the next question, which is how is infrastructure in Manipur socio-politically constructed, and how does the intricate nexus of various stakeholders in building infrastructure shed light on the social as well as political processes of creating and maintaining infrastructure?
Well, Manipur is indeed a very interesting state. And I should say that Manipur is one of the most intricate, with most complex states to unravel. So during the process of my field work, one of the leaders says that, if we could able to come out with amicable solution in the context of Manipur, then one can easily become an international consultant. So that is the kind of response I get when I was doing my field work. So looking at, Manipur is in fact characterized by a deep divide between tribes and non-tribes, or between the plains people and the hills people. So state level politics is dominated by non-tribes who are numerically dominant and socially and economically powerful. And ethnicity is part of the state level politics that shape infrastructure and development discourse. Say, for instance, the dominant ethnic communities invariably influences the planning and location of infrastructural sites. So looking at about these major ethnic stakeholders in the context of Manipur, there are three major ethnic stakeholders which I could categorize it. One is that of the Maitis. The Maitis, again, there are Maitis and the Maiti Pangans. And the two, there are Nagas, like comprised of Pumai, Mao, Tangkul, Rongmai, Annal, Maram, Tangal, and among others. And there's also Zo, so like Kuki, Zomi, Gangte, Paite, Semte, and others. So here, dominant communities like the Maitis are the key player amongst these varied ethnic communities. They dominate development along with public discourse. This stems from an imbalance of the power structure coupled with the advantage of numerically large, economically, and politically powerful seats of governance. So the roots of social exclusions and denial of agencies, especially to tribes, can be located within this framework. So this part of the discontentment and sheer antagonisms of tribe towards the dominant ethnic communities in the state. So the varied political assertions, anxiety and insecurities, apparent in the face of the ethnic minority or the Hill people in the state of Manipur are accentuated in the denial of justice, poverty, and crumbling of infrastructure and valley-centric development, among others. So it is interesting to note that correlations between ethnicity and infrastructure. Say, wherever the dominant ethnic communities reside, infrastructures are far more developed as compared to the places inhabited by ethnic minorities, like for instance, in the Hill district. So the relationships of dominant ethnic stakeholder with state stakeholder infrastructure development is in fact cordial in nature. So infrastructure, that's why I argue that infrastructure has always been an egg of power, which has at different times, been leveraged to smooth relationship, connect people or also disconnect people, enable trade, create space of contestation or dilute boundaries between these varied ethnic groups. So these are key, to unravel in the larger political discourse. So infrastructure plays a major role in power politics and also co-construct the notions of modernity and development, while at the same time breeding injustice and disempowering certain communities. So for instance, the reasons of politicization of electricity are on availability, accessibility, and also affordability for household consumptions. There's some degree of employment, recruitments of experts, corporatizations of electricity, reclamations of land, rehabilitation and resettlement of those displaced inhabitants. And also there's a power generations and environmental issues, among others. And the key issue in the politics of infrastructure is the power dynamics, in that it has its historical roots. Here, the main player in the politics are the major ethnic communities of like Maitis, Naga, and so. These communities, in fact, are marked by what is called a asymmetrical land relationships. So every community has its own ancestral claim over its land systems. Well, some are antithetical to each other, as is the case with Nagas and Kukis, which witness a bloody ethnic conflict over the claim and assertions of ancestral land and territory. Other ethnic communities simply make some historical claims, our land through legal institution and also constructed histories. So physical infrastructure invariably, like roads and others, invariably builds upon land. And it is thus a political activity. So the power relationship determines how infrastructure is planned and executed. So embarking upon this physical or critical infrastructure deepens the material agencies and relationship, fostering close relationship with ethnicity and also co-constructing modernity coupled with injustice and prejudices. So in Manipur, there is no fairness in the distributions of infrastructure across varied social groups. The Hills Valley divide or tribal and non-tribal binary in terms of infrastructure facilities stems from complex historical processes and systematic discrimination matter to tribes. So here, fundamental to the life of physical infrastructure is its intrinsic connections to land. As I say, infrastructure is built on land, like critical infrastructure. Land and identity amongst tribes are intricately, related to each other again. So mega infrastructure invariably fragment lands, village community, and identity. The fragmentations of these holistic constructions of identity in the process of infrastructure built on amounts to injustice and also creates varied kinds of conflict within the community vis-a-vis community and state. So infrastructure, as much as it connects and builds network, also destroys community structure and identity. When land, say for instance, land is turned into a commodity, and the state and dominant community appropriates such land for infrastructure development, the original inhabitant lose control over the land, leading to injustice. More so, when the benefits from such infrastructure development is not accrued to tribes, which is often the case, then it perpetuates injustice, or what I call, infrastructure of injustice. With such development, there's a new governance systems comes into play, and tribes are forever dispossessed of their land. So that on that line, I was arguing how infrastructure in itself is socio-politically constructed, where to build, for whom should the infrastructure be built, and in terms of the alignments of those infrastructure, those are some intricate politics things which been involved in building infrastructure in a state like Manipur. Yeah.
Right. So very fascinating. I was also thinking of some examples. If you could, give us to talk about the nexus that exists in terms of the infrastructure that you're talking about, which is not just limited to politicians, but even bureaucrats and contractors, the insurgents, or the valley-centric elites, and even civil society. So if you could give, one or two examples from your fieldwork. I would also be interested in knowing, some of these intricate challenges, very unique things that come up when you do research on something or a region like Manipur, which is sociologically just not, covered enough. So if you could just bring some of these things into light.
Well, yes, this is again very interesting questions, and especially talking about the nexus to unravel those multiple stakeholders in methodologically also very challenging. So there are these value-loaded concepts such as corruptions and good or bad governance. It have becomes a buzzword in development discourse. So the terminology has been used indiscriminately by politicians and pedestrians. So, however, it is possible in reference to unfair means of practice. For instance, if we look at corruption, bribing, extortions, diversion and subversion of funds, nepotisms, nefarious and unholy nexus in context of Manipur. So here, one quite interesting aspect which I come across from the work of this Harvey and Knox on the concept of corruptions, how they contextualize corruptions in public work. It says that is a disruptive or shattering force, and one that in social terms work against a sense of this unhealthy integrity. So when I try to echo this perspective, that every layer of government, from the traffic police to the top bureaucrats and elected members, is involved in one form or another form of corruptions. So corruption is deeply embedded in the system of governance and its administrations. For instance, a traffic police or traffic officer on duty take bribes from daily wage laborers, such as like rickshaw pullers and vegetable vendors, operating on the side of the road, and allows them to do their daily business. For instance, minister sells contract work to contractor prior to even tender process. Insurgents or militants and government department officials deduct and agreed upon percentage from this development project funds. So these are few instances of corruption. So the corruptions that take place, or the nexus that take place in the infrastructure sector or any sector, is mainly due to these systemic loopholes and unethical practices. So corruption, for that matter, is so deeply rooted in any honest, so deeply rooted that any honest endeavors ends up being excluded and sidelined in the process. So unraveling when and where this corruption starts and ends is methodological challenging, since the vicious cycle of corruption flows continuously uninterrupted. Nevertheless, one can take any aspects as a starting point, However, one will soon realize, how deep the structure of corruption is, and how stakeholders, different stakeholders, get intricately linked into the structure. Stakeholder like the government of Manipur, or like the ministers, bureaucrats, contractors, even insurgents, and even elites in civil society. So here, the connivance and the clandestine nature of the nexus among these stakeholders, namely, I say, ministers, insurgents, contractors, bureaucrats, elites, is deeply embedded in the structure, well operationalized in infrastructure development. So in the order of hierarchy and power, for instance, look at the case of Manipur, minister would occupy the top layers. They are directly connected to all other stakeholders and responsible for awarding contract work. Contractor, irrespective of their credibility, can purchase contract work if they have a good network and internal connections with the ministers and insurgent groups. So there are cases wherein contractor come with a recommendation letter from the insurgent group to pressurize the state authority to award certain contract work to them. So in return, the insurgent groups get certain percentage of the total project cost when contractors get the contract work. And also, again, local elites work closely with ministers and MLAs, and often they act as a gatekeepers for contractor to get access to the ministers and even these insurgent groups. So here, the poor state of infrastructure and the valley or the hills valley divide go beyond, which Tumran and Huram call what they call this infamous unholy trinity. For them, they're looking about the nexus of politicians, bureaucrats, and contractor. But in my case, I extended as it goes beyond this unholy trinity that includes insurgents, elites, and influential people, as well as even civil society. So the waves of corruption and dubious, the nexus swirl around infrastructure projects. Here, the connivance and the clandestine nature of nexus between minister, elites, bureaucrats, contractor, insurgents, civil society is deeply embedded in the structure, well operationalizing governance and development programs. Hence, the outcome of infrastructure project is well reflected in the forms of debilitated rural roads and highways, collapsing of bridges, schools without proper infrastructure, and electrified villages without electricity, and among others. So whosoever disturbs this nexus is either terminated or excluded or sidelined from the process. This is demonstrated, in this modus operandi of the assignments of contract work and its vicious cycle of corruption that has been unraveled when I was doing my fieldwork. And interestingly, there are many micro examples, cases of this infrastructure of injustice where I come across. So interestingly, one village, which is around 40 kilometers away from the national highway, those villagers have been running from pillar to post in order to electrify their village. So after running for nearly 5 years from pillar to post, they were provided an electric pole. So the villagers were so enthusiastic that their village would be electrified. And they gave the whole labor in terms of erecting the electric pole. But the political economy, the interesting part is the electric wires to connect those villages were not given. Poles were erected, but electric wires were not given. So hence, some of them have to resort, spend lots of money in order to buy a solar plate. So these are some cases where, it's electrified, but there's no electricity. So there are many such more examples when we look at about infrastructure. So one of the arguments which I put forward is that creations of infrastructure without its maintenance, it becomes liability rather than an assets. Those are the processes, some of it I look into my work here.
Right. So we've come to the close of this interview. So on behalf of the Doing Sociology team, I'd like to thank you, Rocky, for taking time out today and talking to us. Your work is extremely fascinating as well as critical because it touches on some very important issues around infrastructure as well as injustice within the state of Manipur. And at the same time, the nuanced understanding of networks and connections that you make between the different stakeholders which produce and reproduce structures of injustice bring to light some very important themes in sociological research within Northeast India. And I'm very sure that our viewers are going to take a lot from this interview. So thank you once again for talking to us today.
Thank you so much once again. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your initiatives, the way you have taking forward is doing sociology to another level of engagement. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I've been following these various interviews and reading up all the blogs. So thank you for this initiative.
Thank you so much.